Galeforce Esports walks away with a clean 3-0 victory in our first match of the Heroes Global Championship Part 2. And over Team 8, no less. We were surprised. Michael, you'd all seemed a little bit surprised too.
Yeah, he thought it was going to be a bit closer. I mean, I expected he probably was like, no, we're the better team. We'll come out on top. But yeah, I was surprised considering the Western Clash. Going into the Western Clash, yes. I truly thought Galeforce was the better team. But with the amazing performance that we saw out of Team 8, I thought they were going to just come back and really set the tone for their squad here very early on. But it was rather weak, honestly. After that first game, it seems like it really seemed to hurt their mentality. And
it could be, too, we've talked a little bit about the patch that they're on. Yes, the teams have had time, but it all changes once you're in the true competition form. So that might have been a little bit harmful, even just maybe not knowing that Galeforce Esports was going to come in with a completely different style of play. Doesn't really even seem like they needed ramp-up time with the changes they made.
No, it was very innovative, from seeing a bit of the double warrior, double support when they felt like it was needed, to running a double global, full macro focus. I really appreciate what we got to experience from Galeforce Esports, and I hope it's not going to stop here with Naventic and B-Step.
Well, it's not going to stop, at least in terms of awesome games. We're going to check out the standings now and see where Galeforce Esports and Team 8 sit. That should push, yes, Tempo Storm to the top with that loss by Team 8, and that ties up Team 8 and Galeforce Esports. And again, when there is a tie in the standings, it comes down to things like how many games you have played, won or lost, as well as the matchup face-to-face. These two, Team 8 beat Galeforce Esports in Part 1, so we're looking at this. Team 8 had a really good map score after Part 1. Now we look down a little bit further to the bottom. Team Naventic are only ahead of one team, and that's No Tomorrow. Now's where the comeback needs to start, because just like with the midseason brawl at the end of this part, so is the Crucible.
Yeah, and that's a team that I think at the beginning of HGC North America, not a single person would be sitting there and being like, I think they would be one of the ones that might be in a spot to be able to get knocked out. And it's very important if they do want to survive and make it as a group. Now is the time for them to set the tone. They've had a break. They've had a moment to figure out, what is the problem, a way to try and solve it, and now it's the time to show whether or not they have the tools.
Even B-Step, we all believed with the powerhouse players that are on the team that they would be further up in the standings than they currently sit. But they're in 4th. They have a little bit more breathing room, but still, every match matters. Let's take a closer look at this matchup between B-Step and Naventic.
The team has the experience. It's now about getting on track and practicing and preparing correctly and using what we already have to better ourselves. We're not going to show up and not have experienced something. Since we've already experienced it, it's applying that past knowledge to push us to the top of North America.
I'll say the one thing that our team has more than anyone else, there's no other team I think that can bond as much as us. We have a really good time. We have the players always fly over to each other's houses and stuff like just to kick it and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure our team's the only one that has that. For the qualifiers, we flew over Tomster to our house for like a month just because he was East Coast, just so he could have all 5 players on West Coast. And we just get along really well, and our synergy's there.
Zuna believing that the team has a lot of synergy, but as we said, both of the teams came in. We had high expectations of them solely because of the names on the rosters and what they have done in the past. And yet, while B-Step found their groove in the middle of Part 1, they started drafting all these old school compositions that really worked out in their favor. Naventic really never found that.
And we also referenced in Part 1 that Naventic was a team that has been together now longer as this 5-man roster than any other 5-man iteration of Naventic that has ever existed before. Every other time they'd cycled out at least one player, and then things have gone downhill. They cycle a player, things go well, and it goes downhill. I feel like maybe now they've gone so far down the rabbit hole that, things have gone poorly, that maybe they've hit a breaking point to where it just can't go anywhere but up, and maybe the team has kind of set aside whatever the struggles they may have experienced in Part number 1. I'm hopeful that they would put those things aside to be able to thrive here in Part 2.
I am as well. We're ready to take a look at the Battleground pool for HGC and see where game number 1 will take place. Bans on Braxis Holdout and Warhead Junction, and Team Naventic has chosen Tomb of the Spider Queen to be the first Battleground of this best of 5.
Interesting choice to be a less team fight oriented map here, very rotation heavy, but we know Naventic historically, when they are at their best, it's when they can battle. When it is a team fight oriented map, BOE used to be you know, their go-to, but they've kind of pulled away after a lot of North American teams have been so successful on that map. So I figured more of like a maybe Cursed Hollow, where there is a little bit of macro play, but a lot of it is just, you know, looking at the fight. Sky Temple is a huge one where I would expect Naventic to try and go towards, but instead they're opting for a more passive playstyle, maybe, at least for this 5-man squad.
What is interesting to me about going to Tomb as well for Team Naventic is currently their record is 0-5 on Tomb. It is one of their worst battlegrounds statistically at this point, but I do remember some pocket picks that they've liked before. Oh, poor Tyrael accepts his fate.
Wrecked. Diablo stands tall. Zarya and Tassadar. Zarya and Tassadar have been removed. B-Step moves into the first big Malfurion. I really would like to see the Lucio instant response every time I see the Malfurion. I really do feel like what they provide is just unrivaled by every other support. It allows, if the double support is the name of the game, I don't think on Tomb we'll see that, but if that is the route, again, he is so viable in that direction. I've just been really surprised at how Lucio climbs and then kind of falls and then climbs again for North America and a lot of the Western world.
If the drafts are any indication, the drafts of Part 1 are any indication of what Team Naventic is feeling right here, it's not too bad because they did not play Malfurion on Tomb and they were one of the least focused on Malfurion of all of the NA HGC teams, it felt like. So at this point, not too big of a steal away from them unless they've made significant changes. They did like playing a Varian, of course. That is another question, the same question we had with Team 8, right? Is how willing will they be to play Varian? Team 8 was fine with it. They didn't win with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's something to consider. They were fine with it in play styles that they were very comfortable with. So will we still see that from them? Because like when they were running it, it was like in that like Mouth Jaina kill comp into the 4-man. And that fits Naventic's play style as a team. Whenever they go to maps like this, to be their 4-man is not wave clear, it is kill comp. Again, trying to turn a macro game into a more team fight focused map, really. It's a nice way to manipulate it.
Yeah, it almost felt like until B-Kid started playing on Varian, he was caught out a lot from other teams.
Yeah.
It was once he started playing Varian that the adjustments, the right adjustments came in for Team Naventic. So we'll see if Arthas works the same for them, but Arthas does have Lucio as an enabler, which is huge.
Yeah, I mean, that is a colossal rotation on the side of Naventic, and now B-Step has to look for their answers. Where is it going to be into the draft? Murden high up here, and Ragnaros surprisingly high in this draft will be the solo for Tomb of the Spider Queen. It is a map where we saw Ragnaros, you know, on the defensive be rather impactful, but I figured that would be a post-secondary ban phase. Outside of Battlefield is the only map where I really see, oh, there's a huge immortal. I can, you know, get the defensive value that we know this hero is so good at. But we'll see if they make it work out. A lot of lockdowns just bursts out of the B-Step composition. And more importantly, we have Calf on a comfort hero.
Yes.
It's going to be the Murden.
Yeah, his Murden late game is terrifying to opponents, to enemy teams. I find that Ragnaros interesting as well, especially into Arthas. You'll have to be careful with his positioning. I also wonder if it's going to be K1 Pro playing Ragnaros. In Part 1, he was sometimes flexing over to melees, and Ragnaros was one of the ones that he would flex into more. But this is the first time that we're seeing Ragnaros here in an HGC since his nerfs.
Gul'dan is removed for Naventic. I think that makes a lot of sense considering they have, you know, Arthas is decent in the wave clear, but it's more, again, the kill comp with their 4-man so far. They don't have to full commit to it, though. Right now, it's a kind of a left open, whatever falls in their hands when it comes to the bans on the side of B-Step. B-Step, I'm guessing his focus has got to be either they're afraid of a solo, specifically into Ragnaros, or they're going to be worried more about a backliner.
Are they going to Zeratul Jaina?
On the side of
B-Step?
B-Step? I mean, they can, but will they? I don't think so. My first thought is no, banning on the Ariel, afraid of that double support again. But the reasoning why I wouldn't, oh man, why I wouldn't like to see that from them is mainly because, you know, the camera got on me. There was a lot of pressure. The pen, like I did the flipperoon, and it just didn't work out.
6.5 out of 10 on that flip.
Yeah, but so why I wouldn't, it's just, it makes you legitimately a Wombo-only team. And one thing you have to consider is Lucio is actually one of the best anti-Wombo supports in the game.
That's true.
Because when a Void hits, especially because you just look for the break it down, and it's, unless you CC him directly, he's a really nice response to what is only a snare. And also, if you drop a Void very early, you can actually just start half-channeling your ult into it, and then the Void drops, and if they Wombo, you proceed to win the team fight. Nazebo is going to be picked up here for Naventic, so some changes when it comes to the drafting tools here on the side of Naventic in Part 2 compared to Part 1, whereas B-Step seems to be playing a bit more traditionally, and the Johanna, so a double warrior locked in for Naventic.
So B-Kid now playing Johanna. Tomster probably playing Arthas. Does this free him up maybe for Syndragosa once again?
It would allow for more of an opportunity to move into Syndragosa. I think it's always a compositional thing. It's more of your opponents than yours. A lot of the times, how much burst do they have? I mean, yours is going to be relative as well, or important and something to consider as well. Right now, I'm not totally sold on the Syndragosa. It's on Tomb. It's not until late game does Syndragosa actually change the outcome of a game, whereas early game, typically Army of the Undead is just going to be insane to be able to deal with. But we'll find out where B-Step's going to move into this draft. I'd like to see kill potential into the 4 now that they have the Murd and Malfurion, so something like the Jaina for K1 Pro, a classic of his.
They've played Kael'thas on Tomb
I would
before
like that.
too.
I would like that a lot,
Yeah.
actually. Into the Arthas, I would love a KT.
Tyrael Jaina.
Oh man, I think I would like the KT even more than the Jaina, just because Kael'thas is a soft counter to the Arthas and also just more lockdown, you know, that you can never really go wrong with that much more lockdown, but it is a huge comfort, and then it is going to be the double warrior, the Tyrael, and the Murden here on the side of B-Step. Is it a double support, though, for Naventic? I feel like the answer is no. They do have 2 people who can solo, but none who are, I would consider, good solo lanes. Arthas and Nazebo both can hold their own, whereas Ragnaros and Tyrael both can do that. Ragnaros succeeds, whereas Tyrael is kind of a placeholder. I really do like the 4-man and the 1 of B-Step, but I like the rounded composition of Naventic so far, unless they pick another support. Then I feel like they are way too teamfight oriented considering the map.
The only other thing I have that's been drafted for Naventic on Tomb before, potentially, if they want a solo, would be Thrall. Definitely want somebody who can help with damage, though, too.
Tychus.
Tychus.
Tychus is the choice. Interesting. Really, really different drafts than what we experienced in the first game here. Or first series, excuse me, of HGC. Between Teammate and Gale Force, it was just way, way different. But Naventic's made changes, and so has B-Step a little bit, but not nearly as much as I would say on the side of Naventic, which makes me very optimistic of their performance here in this game.
Yeah, the biggest thing I see for B-Step is probably the Tyrael. I'm wondering, too, if we still are going to have K1 Pro play Jaina, or if they're going to make adjustments since K1 Pro often flexes into a 3rd melee. So that will be a big consideration for me, is who ends up playing Jaina for B-Step.
Yeah.
But yeah, the drafts have me bamboozled, to use your word.
That's where we're going? They have you bamboozled. Why? What's got you thinking?
Team Naventic has picked so many late game heroes.
Yes. And a traditionally early game team.
Yes.
Yeah, that's weird. I agree with you, and it's less focused on maybe team fighting that much. They picked the Lucio Arthas kind of hinting they could, but then they backed out of it with the Johanna and Nazebo. Very passive, very objective oriented, so considering the map a bit more. I like the Arthas, and I love that. I'm not totally sold on the Nazebo and the Johanna rotation, though. I would have liked to see if you are going to run a double warrior, move in a different direction, and a more stable solo into the Ragnaros that we know on the side of B-Step.
All right, we're ready for game number 1, so let's see whose draft will reign supreme on Tomb of the Spider Queen. God, the rhyme was almost there. Almost. Here in the blue is Team Naventic, with Kenma playing Lucio, B-Kid on his Johanna. Zuna will be flexing to play the Arthas, while Big E, Big Impact's playing Nazeebo, and finally Tomster will be playing Tychus.
And in the red here is going to be B-Step. 8 p.m. as always on the support there, playing the Malfurion. King Caffeine, as we said before, very comfortable there on the Murden. K1 Pro will be flexing towards the Ragnaros pick. iDream then will now be moving on to that Jaina, and last here we have McIntyre on the Tyrael. I love everything about this except for I would swap K1 Pro and iDream. I really want K1 Pro on the Jaina. The impact he has as a player is absolutely insane when he gets on that hero. But everything else, like when you look at McIntyre on Tyrael, you know, having King Caffeine onto the Murden, those are very, like, just terrifying things to be able to think of, knowing these players pass.
And it does show us that the team is still trying to figure out the melee position and how they want to flex, because the first time that we saw B-Step have K1 Pro on a melee, I think was Ragnaros once again, and then it was a Thrall too. And at that point, we talked to him, I asked him, and he said, yeah, it's mainly just that, especially for Ragnaros, the rest of the team aren't as comfortable making sure that they're, you know, landing Sulfur Smash, I think, was the big thing. So once again, K1 Pro still seems to be maybe more toward the main Ragnaros player at this point.
Yeah, and Naventic though, oh, good stun out there. Iron Skin's going to be used, so things are fine for now for Naventic. But as the game moves on, we talked about the late game of Naventic, and even a bit when it comes to the early game, not in the kill potential, but when it comes to just their control onto the map. My goodness, APM with an ambitious Moonfire, but was not caught out. Zuna didn't risk the aggression, knowing that there were two members on the bottom. But they have such good wave clear early on. Malfurion caught out. The root to be able to peel, but the zombie wall locks him in. That is now going to be first blood. Big impact, making plays, but Zuna ends up falling as, you know, byproduct.
Oh, that smite was great, especially with Purge Evil from Tyrael. All that extra damage almost gets another kill for B-Step, but it at least will make Kenma go back and use his tap. The laning so far for Team Naventic has been understanding of the fact that they don't necessarily have as much of a solo laner, but Tomster does, as in Tychus, fairly well versus Ragnaros. Having played Ragnaros against Tychus and dying quite a lot in that solo lane, you saw that one. It can work out, but he has to make sure that they are calling out when people are missing, because both teams are being very fluid with their rotations, trying to get picks.
Yeah, Tychus is one of those, like, a false stat where it's like, because he's ranged, he can do his own thing pretty well into most of the matchups, but he doesn't necessarily thrive, especially when it comes to ganks. That's actually why, for those of you at home trying to consider why do we see often melees in that role, it's because their health bars are so forgiving, and typically they have self-sustain. So when you gank them, they're more probable to succeed over than the range, because you always go, well, it's a melee, why don't I, like, Tychus is huge, especially post-4. It'd be like, go the bigger they are, drop it to 35% HP, and then I win this matchup, right? But the answer typically is no, because you're getting ganked so much that you just die.
Right. Especially where the lanes are so close together, like on Tomb the Spider Queen.
Yeah.
And let's remember that the reason why Tychus is not seen as much as before is because his range was reduced. So to even put out that damage, he has to get just a little bit closer too. So we'll keep an eye on Tomster and how he does in the solo lane, especially with so many rotations from either side. Both sides trying to get their gems for the first turn in too. Team Naventic has had a little bit more control over them so far, and that's allowed them to have 22 in the bank. So very close, or at least halfway to their first Web Weavers.
Yeah, I'm surprised we haven't seen more zoning off of, like, the attempt of turning there for B-Step. Oh my goodness, King Caffeine with another what seems like homing Stormbolt there. McIntyre goes in, but Kenma is going to be able to dance right out of there. I'm trying to figure out, historically we know Kenma to be poor positioning in the support role. Does that make him better or worse at Lucio? That's the second time he's escaped on where a normal support he would have died. I'm starting to feel like, that naturally makes it more forgiving for him as a player, to where Naventic will be more successful when it comes to, as I say that, inconveniently.
It depends, right? Because if you have to use something like Amp It Up to give you more of the movement speed, then all of a sudden you don't have that to be able to heal your team.
And also, you know, if you're going that fast, which, I mean, he's
going the speed of sound.
He's going pretty quick. That means you can equally go too far, you know, too fast as well. So
yeah, trying to get in and getting those boops.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's interesting to think about, you know, just questions of an ex-support main. It really is what we're kind of vomiting my train of thought
Shower
here.
thoughts?
Yeah.
Here at HGC.
But that is going to be the first Web Weavers turned in here for Naventic. Understandably so, considering, again, the Johanna control and the lack of focus into the wave clear on the side of B-Step. And they've not been able to net, you know, very many kills in the top lane. And Zuna's done a phenomenal job there on the Arthas to be able to capitalize.
All right, Naventic sees Molten Core used in the bot, so that Web Weaver is defended. Going to try to collapse onto mid. However, B-Step have done such a good job of making sure to take care of that one too, that now the only thing that maybe Naventic can get is a kill on McIntyre, who dodges right out of Zombie Wall.
Thanks to that Smite movement speed. And they are just fine and dandy for now. The Web Weavers really gained no experience advantage over to Naventic thanks to Ragnaros and just the beautiful clear. Very well done. I'm trying to has so much reasoning that his pen jumped out of his hand in shock.
Did you forget that you threw your pen?
I know,
like
I remember. I just don't know if reasoning. I think if anything, it was just, you know, my pure panic. The camera, I was just like, team.
Someone's looking at me.
Help. They can see my face. So this is, I'm trying to figure out if the turn-in, iDream actually getting caught out a little bit there. Kemba can't collapse around. I'm trying to figure out if that getting that turn-in that early for a team with such a good early game on Tomb of the Spider Queen compared to the pretty meh of B-Step. They're waiting for that post-10 team fight. Is it better into a Ragnaros to get a turn-in that early, especially if you don't have necessarily the best siege? You have good wave clear and good turn-in, but not very good siege. I almost wonder if it's better to wait, because not gaining that advantage and then knowing that B-Step has a heavy teamfight composition, you would just essentially waste 50 gems.
Yeah, and they really did not get anything out of it. I think maybe one tower fell, but you can even tell that B-Step has plenty of gems, way more, almost 2 turn-ins worth, and Team Naventic has spent those. They at least get a kill on Ragnaros, but the experience until that kill was dead even. So it goes to show how well B-Step defended and how much it could have hurt Team Naventic. We'll have to wait and see, I think, how the game develops, too. If Naventic gets to a point where there's a long period of time where they can't get a turn-in and they haven't taken down enough structures, I think that's going to be our telling point.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that you bring up there. And also, I just want to commend Zuna's performance so far in this game. He has been a lot of the reason for any of the early pressure that Naventic has been able to achieve. Purely just, he is so good at understanding when he has the upper hand and when he can force an issue. And Arthas is a hero that just does that so well, you know. Man, McIntyre actually getting caught out there as well.
Judgment?
That's a thing.
Judgment, Sulfurous
Tranquility.
Snap.
Tranquility, Judgment.
Oh, yeah. I was so surprised by Judgment that I was like, yeah, Tranquility, but sometimes, occasionally, you'll see that, right? Maybe not in an A. There's no cleanse.
But there's no target. Ken is the only person. Ken is the only person who dies to that initiation. Post 13, Nazebo looks at you and goes, thanks, bro. Thanks for the free judgment. Like, there's no way I'm going down to this.
Talking about superstition.
I was going to drop the Odin. Arthas just survives. Johanna drops Iron Skin and just survives.
And plus, if it's anybody else besides Lucio, then he can have Sound Barrier. There it goes, Sulfurous Smash. We are wrong. Lucio just gets blown up. Ring of Frost. Taika is taken out too.
And that is going to be a pick on to Kenma and netting 2 kills. So while we sit there questioning what his thought process is,
B-Step's like, stop, let me show you.
Yeah, no, you guys got to watch this in action. We press our R buttons and things just pew right out into outer space. How long does that last, though? That is what the question I am going to raise here, because, good Blessed Shield. Keep in mind, no sync to try and buy any peel there. So that is going to be a kill once again to Naventic. I like the thought process. We've seen this before, specifically into Naventic. Into Naventic, a lot of teams have been like, well, if Kemba's going to try and overextend, we'll try and take him into Judgment, dive with a Tracer, somebody to get onto the backline. Jane is going to be that hero here. In this case, I'm still at a loss for the Trank, though. I'm going to be honest. If that is the blow-up strategy, and another blown up here.
Is it taking a look at Team Naventic and their damage capabilities? Well, there's the bigger they are, though, for Tychus, but otherwise, you know, it's sort of trying to mitigate that poison damage from Nazebo.
I mean, it's into the double tank, then they don't have enough burst, so then Tranquility suddenly gains a lot of value when you're stacked as a group. Hold on a minute here, K1 Pro, beautiful nade from Tomster. So Fury smash onto Zuna, but it costs him his life there. Ken drops the sound barrier here as Odin is used as well, so sieging up is going to be Naventic. I get the thought process into the double warrior and the dot damage of Nazebo, but if you do not kill something with Judgment Ring, nothing is going to die, just period. Whereas Twilight Dream would ensure that that target is going to die almost 100%. And also do decent into all the other variables that we're bringing up. Like, I'm one of the biggest advocates for Tranquility when it's right, but I just feel like this is, it would be into a synced. If this was a synced game, I love the thought process there. There's no way Nazebo can outdamage all of that into a double warrior.
For the healing to start to go through.
Yeah, but not without it. If you're gonna go for a dive burst comp, y'all gotta dive and burst.
Well, we'll see. B-Step are down a full level. They haven't been able to turn in, though. And that's really where that experience comes in from Team Naventic, who, in the midst of losing 2 to the blow-up of B-Step, did get a turn-in and took out a 4 and some more towers. Significant damage to both of the other forts for B-Step too, but the fact that B-Step hasn't lost that much and still has quite a few gems is a good sign for them, as long as they can get a turn-in.
Yeah, they've got to keep up in the experience for that long, and B-Kid patiently waits, flashlight out, and now will they be able to get the delay even longer here? Because if Naventic gets another turn-in and snowballs that experience advantage that much farther ahead, I really do think the window for B-Step may have been closed. Ragnaros can, again, he can defend so well, but he can't do it that often.
That was both grenade and shield glare used, so B-Kid's gonna have to step in a little bit further. B-Step are trying to get a better zoning set up to stop McIntyre. Tomster walks in, Stormbolt does not connect.
When are we gonna press the R button? McIntyre's looking for it. Kenma with safe positioning this time. Zuna got the peel, drops the Army of the Undead. Odin used as well. It looks like B-Step no longer wants to battle. Blessed Shield's gonna try and say not today. Howling Blast used. K1 Pro is over the wall. Sound Barrier as well. Dwarf Toss out. Tranks used. Heroics traded, but not the two that matter when looking at B-Step's comp.
Right, Ice Block and Tranquility were big in keeping Malfurion alive through the Odin damage and Blessed Shield, everything else too. Blessed Shield has a pretty low cooldown though, so Naventic will have that soon, but otherwise everything else has been used, and there's still Ring of Frost, Judgment, and Sulfurous Smash.
Yeah, that's the holy trinity of this composition. Zuna stunned out, no Army of the Undead here either. There's the Judgment, there's the Smash, but is not going to connect. Ring locks it in though, and that is now a 1-for-1. Tyro's passive gets the pick onto Kenma, and B-Step pulls ahead here. They are going to get enough for a turn in here. They have the tools. The question is, can they zone enough? Tomster walks right into a Blizzard.
That Blizzard was awesome from iDream, and now Beacon's the one in trouble. And iDream with this Frostbolt build can throw these out all day.
Blessed Shield came back off cooldown and was used again to be able to peel. But the turn in, oh no. Oh my. One more. There's no way he gets this again, right? B-Kid. That is, I would say playing with fire, but you're literally playing against fire here. So it's, man.
Isn't that what that means? You're playing, like,
yeah,
you're playing with fire?
I guess, you know, maybe it was more apt than I was giving credit for. It just felt weird, you know? You, just,
you nailed it. And
then I backed out. Standard Dread, you know? When the pressure's on, you flip pens and lose them, you know?
The proverbial pen flip. B-Step now finally with Web Weavers. Not quite 16, but let's see what damage they can bring. Judgment's already back. Sulfurous Smash and Ring are about to be online too.
And we have a moment here where we'll be able to figure out whatever's going on here for these players. But let's take a minute to look at what we've experienced so far. When the R buttons are pressed together, things are going to die because Kenma just straight up cannot keep himself alive.
Yeah.
That's not even a position thing. It's legitimately just you can't as a support by yourself. And so nobody on the side of Naventic, when they use their heroics, if they aren't successful, I don't know if they're going to be able to stop that burst pick. but they're losing in the macro on the side of B-Step because Naventic has such a, you know, they have the late game Nazebo, they also have the Johanna. And I feel like with Kenma being the only focus, as this game gets later, even without the R buttons used properly, the heroics timed properly on the side of Naventic, I do think that they will scale so hard that this won't be as easy for B-Step as it has looked, at least when it comes to team fighting.
But the big deal in that last team fight was that everything was used for Naventic, and most importantly, sound barrier. So
Yes.
that allowed B-Step to focus on someone else. They whittled down the health bar of Zuna, and then once he got low enough, they could all go in and burst him down, and sound barrier wasn't there and wasn't available. So if B-Step can take advantage of that and keep trying to bait out these abilities while keeping and making sure that they're keeping that really important combination, then maybe they can just continue to do this a few more times because, yes, B-Step are behind in the macro game, but this is the first time they're able to turn in.
Yeah, is a good point, you know. But I think, what if they don't stack those heroics? Not as hard. You know, they were all pressing, they were all looking to use every heroic that they possibly had inside of Naventic at the same time without a sure fight. We know the biggest problem with Johanna, her failure to be able to enforce a fight outside of a Blessed Shield, and most of the time that's not that big of a deal. Arthas struggles from the same problem. He's a walking Howling Blast. But if he gets on you, then you're not moving anywhere, whereas Johanna you can still trying to retreat from. So if one of those flanks, at any point in this game, specifically the Arthas, makes the most amount of sense. This game is a different story because they're looking to try and bait those out by the time and then look for the initiation or look for the initiation before any of the heroics are traded. I just feel like if Naventic slightly alters the way they approach these fights, that the direct team fighting with the Tranquility, with the Judgment is not enough. If Sound Barrier goes off, that's all that they need out of Kenma.
Yeah, I guess it just comes down to whether or not Naventic can make the necessary adaptations. We take a look at a lot of these teams, and sometimes they just can't find the right adaptation within the game to be able to start making the fights go their way.
16 though, up for Naventic here, as the Web Weavers were turned in for B-Step, so this is the moment. They have the Judgment online, they've got the ring, Sulfura Smash. All heroics still here for Naventic as well. One Web Weaver left, and so this turn-in happened for B-Step, but that's how I would describe the events during this Web Weaver turn-in. It just happened. There was nothing gained structurally for that. They do have another turn-in option.
Yeah, but there's no advantage. You know, there's no lane that's pushed all the way up to the keep that Naventic has to deal with at all. The lanes are still even, and that allows Naventic to get right back in and stop that second turn-in from gaining more traction for B-Step. Superstition, like you mentioned earlier for Nazebo, Neo Steel coding too, and the zoning was there for Naventic because they're going to get a third turn-in.
The Neo Steel coding makes a lot of sense, especially with the nerf that we saw onto That's the Stuff, but then considering you're into a Jaina and then Judgment, it makes you that less priority when it comes to Judgment, and it also puts you in a position to where if Jaina trades really hard into you with a Blizzard combo, especially post-16, you at least don't instantly die.
Anti-Magic Shell for Arthas at 20.
There's the Judgment. The coding is gonna be needed, and he's unscathed after that use of heroics there, and that was the combo that we were talking about. The Ragnaros, Molten Core, he gets it.
Swing.
The swing.
But nothing else too much to be able to follow up B-Steps. King Caffeine is diving into the backline, trying to find a target, any target to take out. But finding nothing now, B-Step have lost their fort. They've lost the defensive structure. And
every heroic was used, even Tranquility, whether or not it was needed or not. Naventic did pop all of their heroics, but nobody was really taking damage on the side of B-Step except for the front targets, and Tranquility still was going to be used there. That was what I was talking about, though, when I was talking about Judgment. There's one target who is going to die, and the rest are like, all right, thanks. That was not as smooth as it could have been. But it still was, man, it is just, I'm amazed that B-Step risked any other target other than Ken after the first two being so clean.
Yeah, maybe getting a little antsy with the Web Weavers pushing in on them. But they were defended. All three forts remain for Naventic. All three forts gone for B-Step. Judgment's back, and B-Step, as long as they have those three heroic abilities, those key combos for the Wombo, if you will, they have possibilities to get back into a fight. We'll see if they choose to take this one.
Howling Blast. Nobody wants to move up, though. Malfurion still has shown himself on the top. So Naventic essentially just scraping to get any and every gem they can get their hands on, get the 20 advantage, force the turn in there, but denying B-Step the entire time. So B-Step really has to force a turn in here, which we see them looking to do now. The ultimates are online, Iron Skin used. Howling Blast connects onto a perfect target, Jaina. She drops Ring defensively, not gonna have it offensively anymore, and that is already a first blood. Things falling apart here for B-Step.
Yeah, especially looking at Tyrael. He'll be the next to fall. King Caffeine trying to run away. Gets caught by zombies, but jumps right on out of that. But 2 kills, and it started with the pressure on Jaina. The panic, Ring of Frost to 2. And with those 2 kills, Naventic feels very comfortable, especially almost having 20 going after the boss here in the top lane.
They've not got enough for a boss turn in play. Johanna staying on the bottom to deny a turn in here. This is very heads up coming out from B-Kid. The rotation now from Lucio to move in. Flashlight says no counter turn in for you. He should be able to delay that by himself as well. And then look at that. Kenma. And we see as well Tomster moving down saying, you know, you're looking for this turn in, but we're going to be able to deny a perfect play from Naventic, making things go from bad to worse here for B-Step.
APM's trying to get out of dodge, but he's going to get flanked by Zuna, and he's already taken out 2. K1 Pro's slowed down constantly from Arthas, and just with that nice flank, 2 more kills for Team Naventic.
Yeah, and though we did see, oh, is Murden going to be able to get that? I don't think so. All right, so when we were talking about not only the dive targets, but also if Naventic can just force that fight, the team fight of B-Step just doesn't exist. And I think that, again, that top initiation when Ring has to be used defensively is a prime example. It wasn't even close. 2 people immediately eliminated from the Battleground. So it's B-Step's draft. Again, it's one of those moments of, like, appreciate the innovation, but the Gale Force picked an innovative draft that is forgiving. No, B-Step picked one that has one way to win. And that is the difference between actual innovation and just creativity, I feel like. It's a huge thing, because we see unique comps across the world, but it's the ones that go considering what is the most frequent circumstances I'm going to be able to experience in this game, and then when are they going to be useful. And that, it's a struggle here right now for B-Step, because they've got Web Weavers, 1 keep left up, down 20 advantage, and Naventic, you know, they're just waiting for their opportunity to look for core.
So Fury Smash in 5 seconds. This may be the last chance that B-Step has to try to get kills on the members of Naventic. Diving in, iDream taken out as Ring of Frost goes down. Ice block by some time. We're into Tranquility 2. Lucio taken out. It's a 1-for-1, but the core is dropping rapidly, and Team Naventic will win game number 1.
And we referenced it in the draft that Naventic was making adjustments, playing less of this I'm a team fight only composition and looking more towards the map, playing a little bit more on the wave clear, and it paid out for them. B-Step took a lot of risks when it came to their draft, and especially their heroic choices. So we'll see if that kind of pays out, but at least for now, it looks like Naventic, you know, they've looked towards what was going wrong and how can we improve those things, and you got to commend them for that.
Even though it was a new heroic we haven't seen from B-Step, it still felt like the same B-Step we saw in part 1, where they were trying to just obliterate one person very quickly. You know, before it was they were playing Tyrande, they were playing Mind Control Sylvanas too. This way is just another innovation, another different thing that they are doing. It didn't work out here for Team Naventic, or against Team Naventic, but at the same time it was Naventic's battleground choice. It might be different if B-Step picks a more favorable battleground.
Yeah, that could be the case. I think a lot of it's going to be just their drafting and then again how they look to get those playstyle. But you're right, that was B-Step when they kind of recovered, if you will. We were talking about, you know, this team is not looking as strong as we would make them out to be for the huge names on the roster. And the minute they started going like into that variant kill comp, even I think we saw moments of Tyrande showing up here and there, where like this feels very them, you know, and you could see it within their play. And even in the last game, it was the same style, but not nearly as clean. You know, specifically, you know, the one judgment that decided to not go on to Kenma was the minute the game started going wrong, you know, and I think that's very clear when you build that type of composition, you can't risk it. Again, it's not very forgiving. Yeah,
especially once iDream started to get jumped on, they really just didn't have the tools to be able to keep him alive. We'll see if things are different in the next game. We're headed to a break, and when we come back, game number 2.